Hello folks, welcome to tonight's session, and today we're going to be playing with weather. I know we played with weather before, we did some snow, but this is a little bit more in Photoshop. So what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be taking a picture and adding a bit of mist. Also, we are going to be taking a photograph and adding some rain. We kind of touched on this previously, but I'm showing you new methods. So we're going to take this picture here, add a little bit of rain, maybe add a little bit of sleet, and then just for the fun of it, a little bit more advanced, we're going to add some lightning. So the idea of this is that the first couple really are quite easy, and then the lightning one's a little bit more tricky. So, you know, just kind of do the ones that you can do really. If you just want to stick to the easy ones, that's absolutely fine. But if you fancy stretching yourself a bit and having a go at some lightning, we can do that as well. So I've sent these files over to you, the starting files. So we're going to start with this one here. As you can see, it was quite a misty morning anyway, but we're just going to put a bit of ground mist in there as well. So it's actually a slightly different picture. So let's drop this into Photoshop. So I'm just going to go edit with Lightroom adjustments. And we need that picture, and we also need a picture of some clouds. So I've sent you this one as well. This one will work quite well, but if you've got pictures of your own clouds, that will do nicely. So we're just going to go Control and E and send that cloud picture over as well. Now you can actually create mist in several different ways. You can sort of create your own brush and you can just paint the mist on. But I think using clouds, it's kind of organic, because obviously clouds basically are mist in the sky, so they usually tend to work quite well. So what we're going to do then is we're going to take this picture first of all, our cloud picture, and we just need to desaturate it. So if you press Control and U, that is hue and saturation, Command and U on the Mac, and just reduce the saturation down, then you'll see it goes black and white. Now what we can do is we need to increase the contrast of this. Basically we're going to use one of the blending modes, and for that to work best we need kind of this to be almost black and white. So we're just going to go Control and L for levels, and we're going to move you've got three sliders, white, mid-tone slider and a black slider. Just move the black slider over until you get kind of a very contrasty image. You can always just bring the mid-tones up a little bit, but just be careful not to do that and kind of blow out all your whites. So you kind of looking, you know, probably something like that, where there's still detail in it, but there's still quite a lot of dark areas in this. And we'll click OK. Okay, so now what we need to do, we need to get that layer over to the other layer. So we've got several methods of doing this. If you remember previously, I've shown you where we can drag the background from here, hover over the tab, wait and drop it in. That was method one. Method two, if you remember, probably quick and easy. I gave you three methods previously. So the next method is we can just go Control A, Control C, come to this document, switch that layer off there, and go Control V, and we can paste it in that way. So whichever method works best for you. We're going to need one of those layers. Right, now obviously at the moment this looks completely unrealistic, and the reason is, of course, we need to change the blending mode, and we're going to change it to a blending mode of either lighten or screen, and I think we're probably going to go with screen. Now obviously at the moment this is still not looking at all convincing, so there's a few things we need to do. So first thing, we're going to use the move tool. The move tool obviously is this tool here. The shortcut for the move tool is the letter V, and we can just move this mist down a little bit and put it on the ground. It's going up here, which we don't really need. It wouldn't be up there. It'd be low lying mist. So what we can do here is we can just squish this down a bit, and to do that we're going to press Control or Command T, and then just move this down, and we can just move it down kind of to cover the land. Now if you're moving this and everything is kind of resizing, that's how you've got Photoshop set up. If it's kind of set up the default same way mine is, you should just be able to do this, drag it up and down. But if for some reason it starts to look like that, then just hold down the shift key as you resize, and that will allow you to resize it. Okay, we're getting there. So now we've got the mist, but of course it still doesn't look realistic. So what we need to do is just drop the opacity down, and you'll see that as we drop the opacity, it looks a little bit better. But it's still not quite there. So I think what we really need to do now is we probably need to just blur it. It's still too obvious. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Filter, making sure that we're on the cloud layer. Tell you what, let's just rename. We'll call the background layer hut, and we'll call this one mist, shall we? There we go. So on the mist layer, click on the mist layer, go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. This is a filter that we tend to use an awful lot in Photoshop. We tend to use this a lot. And there we go. And you're looking for a blur, kind of look at your picture here. If you click in the cloud, you'll see the mask. And what we want to do is we want to feather it off and make it look really nice. There we go. Really nice and sort of soft and misty. So in my case on this one, I'm at about around about 18. It doesn't have to be precise. Okay, and that is looking better. Okay, so we're not looking bad, apart from the fact we've got this really obvious edge just here, which you probably wouldn't do. So what we need to do now is we need to go and just erase these areas. Now of course what we could do, I'll give you both methods. We could just press E or go for the eraser tool and just come over here for the eraser tool, and as you would expect, if I just brush along here, it will erase pixels. Now if you are going to be erasing anything or anything like that, then you need to look at your brush properties, and you want to be using a nice soft brush. So if you just come to your brush properties, drop down, put the hardness at 0, that's a nice soft brush, and you want to probably put the opacity at around about 20% in there. So if you just type 20 in that box, get yourself a reasonable sized brush, and then you should just be able to brush down. There you go, and we can kind of soften that edge like so. Now of course the problem with that is actually, it does soften the edge, it does the job, but it is destructive. So if I just go back in the history, so here's our history panel, and there's the eraser. So if I go back in the history panel to what the last thing we did previous to the eraser was Gaussian blur. If you don't see the history panel, then just come Window and choose History just there. So all I've done now is I've gone back in time and put back that area there. And the reason is, of course, is because ideally you want to use a layer mask. Just click down here at the bottom here where the washing machine is, kind of square with a hole in it. That'll give you a white layer mask. Make sure that your colours are black and white, your swatches are black and white. If they're not black and white, if there are any other colours, then what you need to do is press the D key, D for default, and you can see we've got a white mask, so we actually need to press X, or we can flip with these triangles here, but we basically want black on the top because we've got a white mask, so we need to be painting in black. Next thing we need to do is get the brush. The brush tool is here, and it looks like a letter, and the shortcut is the letter B. Again, with your brush properties, I've got mine at around about 30%. Make sure it's a really nice soft brush. You can make the brush bigger and smaller using the left and right square bracket keys. So the square brackets to the right, make it go bigger, square bracket to the left, make it go smaller. So nice good sized brush, making sure it's lovely and soft. And now I can just brush along here, and you see that I can soften that edge. And the nice thing is you can kind of drop it in, so little areas, like say the door, if you want to bring some extra detail into that, you can just take it out where the door is. Okay. Right, so that's not too bad at all. Now, what we want to do is we can probably improve on that slightly more, and basically by doubling up. So if you need a bit more mist, what we can do is we can just take this layer and go Control and J, and you can see we've doubled up on the mist. And what we can do here is move this layer slightly and maybe even resize it, Control T. And so what we're basically doing is we're getting kind of double layers on there. And you could flip it if you wanted to flip horizontal. And you see we're just selling it there by just putting some extra bits of mist in, and you'll have mist on top of mist. And again, of course, what you might need to do is just go in here to your brush, again with black, and just paint any areas where you think it's too obvious. There we go. And there we have a nice misty morn to go with the misty morn at the back. Okay, so that is that bit. I'll probably just drop this now. I might just drop it back into Lightroom and do a little bit of editing in Lightroom. So let's go off and do that, shall we? So we're going to flatten this. So to flatten it, again, lots of options. We can click on the little menu here, the hamburger menu in the top right of the layers properties. Click on there and we can say flatten image. I can go to a layer over here and I can flatten image from here, because I'm on the top layer, what I actually prefer to do, because it's shortcut, is Shift Control E, and that will flatten down anything below the layer that you're currently on. So I'm on the top layer, so I'm just going to go Shift Control and E, and you can see that's flattened everything down. I can now go Control or Command W, save the changes, yes, and there we go, that's dropped into Lightroom, and I can go in there now, put some negative dehaze in perhaps, bring the exposure down a touch. There you go, and I've got quite a nice sort of misty morning. There we go. Okay, so that's a bit of mist. So hopefully you enjoyed that one. If you're ready, let's go on to the next one. So the next one, we are going to be adding some rain to this picture here. All I've done, I have actually edited this previously. I've just expanded the sky a little bit just to give me a bit of room for the lightning that we'll be adding as well. So let's take this one. We don't need any other layers for this one, so we'll take this picture in to Photoshop. So Control and E, edit a copy. And here we are in Photoshop. Now, we've made sort of snow and various things before, but today we're going to touch on something that I don't think we've used previously, and I will be doing a lesson on this in the future, and it is called actions. Now, this is your actions palette. I've got quite a lot of actions. I create my own actions, and I'm going to show you how to do that on a different day. But if you don't see the actions window, then come over to window and choose actions. That'll bring your action window up. Remember, if it's floating around like this and you want to dock it, you can just pick up the panel and drag it over and you can dock it. See, there's my actions. So basically an action is simply a series of commands carried out in order. So what you could actually do is you could edit a photograph, record the things that you did to that photograph, and then use that same recording to play back those actions again so that you can edit that picture in exactly the same way. Now, I could create an action for making rain or snow, but we don't need to do that because Lightroom, or sorry, should I say Photoshop, actually includes it, but they don't show it to you. They hide it. So what we need to do is in your actions panel, make sure you've got the actions panel selected, come over here to the right to the hamburger menu with the lines, click on there and just come all the way down, past commands, past frames, to one called image effects, and click that. That will load the actions, and it's these actions here. And if you expand here, you'll see that you've got various actions. So aged photos, I encourage you to go and have a play with these. Why not? You've got blizzard and light rain. That's the only sort of ones to do with weather. So let's go and choose light rain to start with. And if you expand the sort of triangle, this here is actually what the action is going to do. This is exactly what it's going to do. It's going to carry out these commands. And so we're going to click on light rain, and we're just going to come down to the bottom here. We're going to press the triangle, the play button. Oh, before we do that, let's just create a duplicate layer. Control and J or Command and J. Okay, and let's name that layer Church, just so that we're all on the same hymn sheet, if you excuse the pun. Okay, so we're on Church, back to actions, light rain, and play. And you'll see there we have the sort of busy indicator, and there we go, there's the rain. And you can see there that has added some rain in. So quite sort of fine rain. If we come over to the layers palette, you'll see what it's actually done is created a copy of the previous layer, and if we switch all these other layers off, that's what it looks like. And the reason it looks like rain is because you can see that they've used the screen blending mode. Now what you can do here is you can sort of change this if you want and do other things with this. So basically if you use the opacity slider, then you will make it less rainy. Okay. If you were to change this, because basically what this is, if we just go back to that again, you see it's just basically a black and white mask. And because we've got the screen blending mode, it's only showing through the lighter areas. So the black areas are effectively hidden. So what I can actually do is I can increase how this rain looks by changing how this mask looks. So if I go and press Control or Command L, that brings up levels. And levels is just kind of like the darkness and the brightness of the picture. And if I play with these sliders, so if I move this one to the right, this is the black slider, we have the mid-tone slider and the white slider. If I get the black slider and move it to the right, what I'm actually doing is I'm making the mask darker. I don't know if you can see that if you look at the mask up here. There you go. It's making the mask darker. If I use the white slider and I bring it up, it's going to make the mask brighter. And you can see what it's actually doing is brightening the white bit, so the rain, and the rain is becoming more prominent. See? And then you've got the center portion that you can tweak it as well. So really here, now we can do this, if you want to keep this simple, then just use levels. But the problem with using levels is it is destructive. What you're actually doing is you're actually changing the pixels in this layer. So I'm going to cancel that for now. Unless you want to be simple, go for that one. If you want a little bit more control, then instead of using a Control L on the actual layer, we can come down to an adjustment layer. That's the little sort of circle with the diagonal line through it, and we can choose levels from here, and that will give you this, which is called an adjustment layer. And basically what this adjustment layer does is anything I do to levels, you see, will affect all the layers below that adjustment layer. If I just press this, I can go back. Now, we've covered this previously, and I know some people had trouble with it. So what we don't want to do is we don't want this adjustment layer to alter these pictures of the church. We only want this adjustment layer to work on this layer here, the rain. And so we've got several ways of doing it. I think the easiest one is just to hover between the two lines, between the two layers that you're interested in, hold down the Alt key, and you'll see that you get a bendy arrow. If you now click what you've done is you've made what's called a clipping layer or a clipping mask, and this layer now, or these adjustments, will only affect the layer directly below. Let me just go Control or Command Z and put that back. Another way to do that is you can right click to the right, so not on the icon, not on the layer, but to the right in the text area, and you can say create clipping mask, and that does the same thing. So that's another method. Control Z, or if you're in the properties panel, there is this option down here. Again, you'll recognize that icon, click on that, and that does exactly the same thing. So there's 3 different ways. In fact, you can actually do it from the menus up here in the top left as well. But there's 3 different ways to do it. But as I say, the one I would recommend is that hold the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and just click between the 2 layers. So now this is only affecting this layer, which means that if I want to have a play with this, I can kind of bring it up, have a play with these, basically get it how I like it. And the great thing is, if I think after I've done that, I think, oh, you know what, I think I overdid that a bit, I'm not really happy with that. Not a problem, just go back and you see that you can pick up where you left off and you can alter everything again. And so now we've got really quite a lot of rain. But there's another benefit. Now let me just make this a little bit obvious. Okay, so that's quite rainy. Okay, that's quite rainy. So obviously what tends to happen when you've got rain is the further back you go, the more effective rain there is in the picture. And as you get closer, the rain is less obvious. So one of the benefits of using adjustment layers is they come with an adjustment mask. And with this mask, I can control where the rain kind of falls, if you like. So again, I've got a white mask. So if I get a brush, go to black, make sure black's on the top because I've got a brush, and again perhaps using opacity of about 30%. If you go straight in at 100%, then what will happen as soon as you touch something, you will get it will be a, let me just Control Z. Tell you what, let me make that brush really hard and then you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so now you'll see as soon as I click, you see that that has affected that area 100%. I don't want to do that. And if you look on the mask, you can see a really hard circle. So let's do Control Z there. And we'll drop the opacity down to 30, around about 30%. Okay, it doesn't have to be exact, anything will do. And now what I can actually do is making sure, again, I've got black. If I just click on little areas here towards the foreground, then those areas would have less rain on them. So here you can see actually the direction of the rain is coming from here. So it would this to some extent would be in a bit of shelter. There we go. And you can see you can nip in there and tweak it about. Okay, so that is how to use an action to make your own rain. Well, I tell you what, while we're in here, let's go and choose the second one, shall we? So let's just go back to our base layer, our church layer, go back to the actions palette, and let's see what a blizzard looks like. So we'll click on blizzard and we'll let that work its magic. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the next section and we're going to create some lightning. Now before I go and create the lightning, there's a couple of little steps I can do which could save me some trouble later on, because I need to work on the sky independently and I might need to work on the land independently. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a selection of the sky, and the easy way to do that, so we've got our background copy and then of course the church copy. This is just really sort of belt and braces in case I make a mess. Click on the church layer, go to select sky, and Photoshop, using its sensei, common sense or whatever you call it, will go and select the sky. So there's your sky selection. I'm now going to press Control or Command J to put that sky on a separate layer, and there you can see it's on a separate layer. I want to keep that selection, so I'm going to click on the sky layer. So I'm on the sky layer and hold down Control or Command and click. And what that will do is wherever there are transparent pixels, it will make a selection using that. Now, as you can see, it's chosen the sky. But what I actually want to do is actually want to flip that, and I want to choose the church. So to do that, we need to go to Select, Inverse. And you can see the shortcut is Shift, Control and I, Command Shift and I on the Mac, so we'll do that. And if you look at the marching ants, you can see that now the opposite is selected, the land or the church is selected. Going back to your church layer, now you've got to go back to the church layer, no point doing it on the sky layer because there is nothing in that selection. So go back to the church layer and go Control J. So if I just show you what we have, if I switch off the two background layers, there's the sky by itself, and there is the church and land by itself. Now, I might not need these, but it does it is quite helpful later on if need be. So we can now switch off the top two layers and come to our church layer. We need to now create a new blank layer to put the lightning in. So we come down to the new layer icon, and we need to fill this with a colour. We cannot create the lightning on a blank layer, we have to go and fill it with something. So we're going to go Edit, Fill, and I'm just going to fill it with grey. So 50% grey. If you don't see that, it's down there. Okay, 50% grey. Click OK. And now we've got a grey layer. Now, I can do the next bit directly from here. And I will do, but I'm going to do it slightly differently because this doesn't always work brilliantly. So we're going to go to Filter, Render, Difference Clouds. And you can see that it's given us this crazy paving look. What I need to do though is I need to invert this. I'm going to go Control and I. And I don't know if you can already see here, but we've already got quite a lot of kind of lightning-y type bolts going on. And so if I press Control and L for levels, what I really need to do is I need to make this virtually black and white. And so by dragging, I've got three sliders, white slider, mid-tone slider and a black slider. If I move the black slider to the left, it will increase contrast. And you can see what it's actually doing is giving us some lightning bolts. But it's giving us too many, it gets quite complicated. So I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to show you a way that will kind of simplify it. So I'm going to fill this layer again with grey. So again, we're going to go Edit, Fill, and remember from before, grey. So I've filled it with grey. Now I'm going to go Control T. That is Transform. And I want to make this box around about a quarter, or say, I don't know, if you hold the Shift key down, you can keep the same shape, by the way. So you keep the same contortions, sort of about a 9th or 10% of the size. And then release and click. Now go Filter, Render. Oh, by the way, you see that once you've done this, it will remember the last thing you did. So in actual fact, Difference Clouds is actually up here. Control Alt F. So we'll click on that one. And again, it's done the lightning bolts. So again, we need to we need to flip it. So Control and I or Command I to turn it to white and black, and then Control L, just like before, and make it nice and contrasty. And what you're looking for is sort of good looking lightning with just a little bit of glow. If you go too sharp, it doesn't look so good. So a little bit of glow around it. There we go. And OK. Now go Control T again, hold the Shift key down, resize it, and you can see that now we've actually got a lot less lightning strikes, which is a bit easier to kind of work with. Great stuff. Okay, we've got good strikes. So the next thing we need to do is the chances of these lightning strikes being in the right place, but what I can do is have a quick peek. If I change this mode here to screen, there's all the lightning strikes. In fact, lighten or screen gives you a slightly different effect. Okay, let's go with lighten for this one. But you can see there we've got lightning strikes everywhere. Now what you could do is we could, if you're happy with where these guys are, and they're not too bad, and there's a lot of them, we could just paint out the ones we don't need, and we've got pretty good lightning strikes. Or we can go and put lightning strikes wherever we like. I tell you what, I think some of those are quite reasonable. So I tell you what, let's go and paint out the ones we don't need. Right. Now I did say this was a little bit more tricky. So what we can do is, if you think about it, at the moment, the reason I can see lightning strikes everywhere is because those lightning strikes are affecting this, all of this picture, the church picture. But this is why I did that extra step. If I take this layer here with the sort of just the church, so if I just let's call that building, shall we, and drag that down. Sorry, keep that. Sorry, I keep it above. There you go. So keep that above this layer. So what I've actually effectively done is, by this building is now on top of the lightning, and so now the lightning is there and it's being contained, and any lightning behind, if I take this off, you'll see the lightning cuts into the other building. So what I'm doing is that layer there is stopping me seeing the lightning underneath. Okay, now I've also got the sky, and the same thing happens with the sky. If I've got the sky layer active, then the sky layer is basically hiding the lightning. Okay, but what I can actually do is, if I bring this below the lightning, we can still see the lightning and the layer. And this is why I created these extra layers. If I go to this layer and go Control L for levels, I can drag this, and you can see that I can independently control what's happening with this layer and make it more kind of more cloudy and darker and that sort of thing. Now again, if I do this, I'm working destructively because I'm actually working on this layer. So what I'm going to do, just like before, I'm going to create an adjustment layer for levels, and I'm going to clip that layer using this box here to the layer below. And now when I change it, it's only affecting the layer below. So I can kind of drop that down. Okay, we're looking good. Now obviously there are lightning bolts everywhere, including in places that we don't want. So we wouldn't like to get one here and like to get one here. Again, not a problem. If I go to the lightning layer, and I can create a mask on the lightning layer, so come down again to the washing machine, you get a white mask, so we need to paint on in black. If I go and get a paintbrush, B for brush, and now wherever I paint, so let's go up to 100%, so let's just set the opacity to 100% for speed, and wherever I paint, I can paint out lightning bolts that I don't like. Just like that. You see? So if there's anything hitting something that you don't want, then that's how you can correct it. And there we go, guys. That pretty much is how to, oops, there's a bit, missed a bit just there. There you go, there's a bit. There you go. That pretty much is how to add your lightning. Now, of course, once you've done all that, if you want to, we can come to the very top and we can create a whole new layer. Now, remember, if you want to create a whole new layer based on this selection here, then what we can do, a couple of things we could do actually, is I could put all of these into a set or a group. So I've selected them all, and if I come down here to this folder icon, I click on there, and I see I've got a group. So what I can do is call this group, I'll call it Storm. And now if I want to, I could go and create some rain above this, because if it's thundering, it's probably a good chance it's raining. So let's go to this layer, and we will create a new layer, and we will fill it. We will now go, what shall we do? So let's click on the action, shall we? Click on Blizzard. We need to fill it. You see, there you go. Just to demonstrate there, you can't do that on a blank layer. I've said that before. You need to fill it, so we just go Edit, Fill. I think this time what I'll do is I'll fill it with black. There we go, fill it with black. And now we can go to Action, Blizzard, Play, and there it goes. And once you've done that, you can actually switch this layer off. You can actually delete this layer, you don't need it anymore. There you go, there's your Blizzard. And obviously we can change the opacity of this, or we could do like we did before. So one thing that we talked about was the rain will kind of be heavier sort of backwards rather than forwards. So what we can do is we could put a mask on here, get a mask, go and get the gradient tool. The shortcut for that is the letter G for the gradient tool. And if I draw a gradient, now whichever way you do it, you're probably going to get this wrong. So I'm just going to draw it from the bottom with black as the foreground colour, and there you go, that's actually worked. You see there that I've got a black gradient down here. If you're not happy with that, you can just Control Z it. Maybe take it from a slightly different angle if you want to. Okay, so if you want to fine tune this, you can go and fine tune this. You can brush out areas if you want to. So again, with the brush, if I just get the brush and say, let's say we want that bush there, we can, whoops, Control Z. We need to make this brush opacity nice and soft. Bring that down about 30%. Make the brush nice and soft as well. So the hardness at 0. Make the brush a wee bit bigger, and I can just kind of come in here and just dab out a couple of areas and soften it up if I want to. And of course, at the end of the day, you've got always got the opportunity to just use the opacity, just drop it down and change that. And I think what we might do, let's put an adjustment layer on top of everything, because it's a bit bright, it almost looks a bit sunny, doesn't it? So let's go and put an adjustment layer right at the top. Let's go for curves this time for a change. So because this adjustment layer is on top of everything, it will affect everything below it. So if I just come in here and I bring the exposure down, there you go, we can just kind of make the whole thing look a bit more moody, which is kind of cool. There we go. Okay, so hopefully guys, that is something you enjoyed. Hours and hours of fun. You can go into these again and you can tweak these. So if you wanted to make this this sort of snow a bit more snowy, if you go to the layer, whoops, double click by mistake, if you just get the layer there and we go to filter, blur, sorry, where are we, blur, motion blur, then what I can do is I can increase that and make it even. There you go, get a bit of a good old storm going there. And you can even, if you want to, if that's not enough, if you just duplicate that layer, you can see that you can double the effect, and then on that effect, if it's too much, just change the opacity and stuff like that. There we are. Oh, the sky's the limit. I could have different size raindrops. So if I get this one and go Control T, make the picture a wee bit smaller, enlarge the picture, move it around. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me sort of some extra rain. So there you go, we've got quite a dramatic picture. Excellent. So we've done everything. Let's go and flatten the whole thing down. Again, we can just go to layers, flatten image. We can go to the hamburger menu here, choose flatten image. So let's do it that way. There we are. That's everything flattened. Control or Command W drops it back into Lightroom. We don't need that one anymore. Won't save the changes off that one. And back in Lightroom, here it comes. And there we go. There is our lightning. So hopefully you found that useful. It's a little bit quick, and you can fine tune it to your heart's consent, and I encourage you to do so. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys. If you've got any questions, obviously write them down, save them up for me, and I'll try to answer them for you. Oh, just one thing, when you are doing your lightning, bear in mind that tall buildings like churches have lightning conductors, and so there's a good chance that any lightning will be striking something high up, so just kind of keep that in mind when you're planning where your lightning strikes go. Fantastic. Okay, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll have another one for you next week. All the best. Bye bye.